guys all ready? Ready?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Just real quick, obviously you guys probably have a lot of questions. As you know, a lot of bills are starting to be filed. I'll do the best I can to try to give some guidance on that, but obviously it'll have to work their way through the process. From the standpoint of, as we've seen in the building this week, multiple property tax plans coming out. My expectation is early next week, we'd like to get our plan out once we've gone through it one more final time as a caucus, get our own plan out. Again, it's going to be consistent from what I've been saying for the last several weeks, probably months now, something that gives certainty to the taxpayer. At the same time, something that I think should be easy for everyone to understand what the impacts are of it, and again, get it out early in session so we can have conversations. So I'll just open it up and just kick it off with that issue.
And the domain has moved quickly.
Oh, yeah.
House here. Could you give a timeline for when you expect that to come to floor?
I don't think we've set an exact timeline, only from the standpoint we have not had another caucus on it. I made it very clear that that was something we were going to look at early on in session. I made the Senate and the governor aware before we introduced the bill that we were going to follow through with what I had been saying, introduce a bill early in session, and committed to saying it was going to be something more narrowly tailored than the bill we had last session. I think it does that. So my expectation is, caucus on it next week and kind of just see what it looks like from there.
The Chief Justice yesterday, she mentioned that criminal defendants, they're being let go without trial. Is that something that was a concern to you? I know that you wanted to also have a tough on crime agenda, so is that something that you wanted to look into more?
Yeah, and one of the things, so after that was discussed in the speeches, I was listening through it, did look back, and at last year, we were able to put additional resources into indigent defense. If you look in the last few budgets from the House, our number has been a little bit higher than where we've been able to find agreement with the Senate in settling what that number is, but we recognize that we need to continue to make investments in that, and I've said all along in this conversation around our tough on crime package that we're hoping to roll out soon, that we need to be mindful that money should not be the reason why we're letting violent offenders back on the street. So we need to recognize that if that is a priority of ours as a legislature, we need to make the investments to make sure that that's happening.
Yesterday, the community colleges told the House Higher Education Committee that they would like $20 million over 5 years to start bachelor's degree programs. Are you open to providing some funding to them to start those programs if you pass the bill?
Yeah. No, and we were thankful for the input from the community colleges. As I've been saying for the last several weeks around this conversation, I think, and that's a very broad approach to taking, and I think some of the feedback we've been getting would be that if we're going to pursue that as a possibility, being a little bit more targeted in the areas of the state that maybe have less access, also at the same time making sure that the degrees that we're focusing on, we're not just creating new four-year institutions, it's going to be focused on high demand fields in the state of Iowa. So I think all of that would have to be part of that conversation as it moves forward through the process. We have interest, but recognizing that that is a significant price tag, so we have to be mindful of that in the process.
What do you mean by more targeted? Do you mean like based on geographic area or population?
It probably would be a combination of multiple things. Number one, are there areas in the state where it's harder to access a four-year degree? I would say would be one piece. Also making sure that the degrees that would be offered, I don't think we want to just turn the community college system into a broad four-year degree types of institutions. That's not necessarily the goal, but also if there are areas of the state, just use an example of like nursing, one of the community colleges I met with said they feel they are in kind of an area where it's hard to turn nursing students through, going all the way through the four-year degree. Is that something you'd be more targeted in than just saying, oh, just open it up for any degree? And so it'd be more of a targeted approach in area and probably what degrees would be offered.
The governor announced that she'll be using a chunk of federal funding for healthcare to address cancer in Iowa. Obviously, that's more on the federal end. It doesn't really involve the legislature. Do you know so far if the House planning on introducing any legislation addressing cancer aside from what Governor Reynolds is planning with that money?
And I think the governor obviously using that in her, bringing that topic up with significant investments in her speech. The first thing I would say on that is, look forward to engaging what that would look like in application. I think the fact that the governor brought it up in her speech shows Iowans were taking this issue very seriously. She also did mention, I can't remember the exact timing that she had said, but hopefully that the report that we invested $1 million in last year, or the study I should say, from the university, hopefully we can start getting some preliminary feedback on what that looks like. I think that will help also drive that part of the conversation. So those two things, I think we're kind of in a, see what the governor's package looks like, see what some of those preliminary results look like as we're heading down that path.
there's been some controversy in a lawsuit filed over the closure of the State Historical Society Institute in Iowa City. The Department of Administrative Services is asking to change the code so that they're not required to have a facility open in Iowa City. Has your caucus had a chance to talk about that? Are you open to that?
I think there are members of the legislature that may not agree with that decision necessarily. I kind of look at that as a piece of policy that will have to work its way. There may be two competing proposals. I don't know what that looks like. Is there an area for some sort of more of a public-private partnership? I don't know what that may look like moving forward, but I think you'll see potentially some different positions from some of our members on that legislation.
You heard this week from the governor and the chief justice and the leader of the guard. Was there anything in those addresses that really stood out to you, like unexpected, or just stuck with you?
Well, one of the things that I think was, whether it was from the governor's speech or today from the guard, obviously the sacrifice that was made by some really tremendous, outstanding Iowans was something that I think you saw a lot of the folks in the legislature really hit home, hit pretty hard for us, and recognizing the sacrifices they made. I think the one thing from the governor's speech that, again, and I was hopeful that it would be a part of it, the fact that the governor's also talking about property taxes as one of the lead-off issues, the way we have been, the way the Senate has been, I think is some positive momentum from the legislature. If you remember last year, we kind of went into this starting down the path. It looks like this year the momentum has just built from last session. So from the governor's speech, policy-wise, that was probably a positive sign for the legislature to accomplish something this year.
To that, I'll ask you a follow-up that I didn't ask you on Press Wednesday. The governor.
Yeah, it's because you were rushing me. You probably lost your place.
That's right, I did.
Yeah, Aaron. Just so you guys know, and it's all rolling. Aaron gets this dig on me. He goes, we do have a lot of topics to get through here. As I know I can filibuster on occasion, but I don't feel like I was. A little bit of an unfair attack, Aaron, but I'll let it go. So go ahead.
A little subtle.
Yeah.
Broad there.
Yeah.
The governor didn't mention eminent domain. Last year, when the handheld, hands-free law finally passed, so many people said one of the reasons it got across the finish line is the governor made it prominent. She made an issue in her condition state address. Do you feel like you need that kind of leadership, that kind of use of the board pulpit from the governor to get that bill done this year, given how there's still disparate ideas being floated around?
Obviously that would, if as long as it came to the position I think we feel has been protecting the property rights, obviously from our perspective that would be very helpful. What I think has been helpful towards that issue is it sounds like, I don't want to speak for the Senate, but in my conversations with the Senate, we're actually hopefully going to see a bill. That doesn't mean we agree with every piece of one another's bill, where the House is at, where the Senate may be with the bill that they're potentially looking at. But I think that's a positive sign from the legislature. I've had conversations with members that the last several years, we've just passed bills over. Most of them didn't even get a subcommittee. No bills came back to us trying to find a solution. So I actually looked at the positive sign would be, it sounds like the Senate is at least looking at solutions. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily we're going to all start in agreement, but I think it's a positive sign that both sides of the rotunda are working on something.
So the governor, I don't believe this was in the condition of the state, but she'll have a proposal that lays a foundation for Iowa to have a state-run healthcare exchange potentially, just while federal lawmakers debate the future of the ACA subsidies. And House Democrats are proposing repealing ESAs to fund the expired ACA subsidies. What do you anticipate House Republicans pursuing healthcare?
Well, I think, again, back to my initial statement, not having seen every proposal that's out there, especially like that from the governor, want to see what that may look like and engaging her with that conversation. I can say, I know there was a lot of proposals made by my friends across the aisle this week. I need to see more details on what some of those look like, the fact that I don't necessarily see how they can be revenue neutral, what the impacts on those are going to be. I'd like to see some more of those details are on those policies that the Democrats laid out this week, but look forward to working with the governor and seeing what she may have for us to. I haven't been given anything yet, but look forward to see what she might share or ask of the legislature.
Got a kind of an inside baseball question. Can you explain your rationale?
Those always scare me. I'll do the best I can, Lord, but bear with me.
Can you explain your rationale for pulling the camera off people who are giving points of privilege? Because they don't do that over in the Senate. And we occasionally see someone, last year I remember Representative Collins gave a very lovely tribute to the former Representative Dave Heaton, who had passed away. And you know, it was something that like I would pull that video and post it online, but then in the House, the camera pulls off people giving the points. What's the reasoning behind that?
I think we've been trying to avoid the body itself coming into more of a campaign style form where you know, like you said, you have the ability to pull it. We've tried to avoid it becoming a place in which, as you know, there's a lot of folks in this room that may be looking at running for higher offices, using them as a platform. One thing I can say, you know, as far as the difference between the House and the Senate, I feel our access to the not only for you guys at the press being able to have access, but also the way we've operated over here, I think we've been very transparent in trying to do things. We obviously still have the audio recordings that would come from those, but I think it's been more to avoid making this building more political than it already may be to start with, would be the answer. All right, sounds good. Thank you.